Good evening. December 11th may go down as the day of the biggest robbery in our country's history, and it happened right here in New York. Somewhere between $3 and $5 million in cash and valuables was taken from the Lufthansa cargo terminal out at Kennedy Airport. And the law enforcement officers say that it was carried off with such precision and such daring, you almost have to consider it an inside job. Here's Anthony Preisendorf.
They took 30 shipments of gold, pearls, jewelry, and checks. They also knew just where to look for the $3 million in used money that had been flown in on Friday from Frankfurt, intended for delivery later in the day to the Chase Manhattan Bank.
The Lufthansa Heist stands as the biggest ever in the USA, especially during the 90s. But what's so interesting about it? Is it the masterminds behind the operation, or the staggering $23 million they walked away with? And how did it all unfold at an international airport? Let's find out. It all began on December the 11th, 1978, when 6 masked and heavily armed men stormed into the Lufthansa Airlines cargo terminal at New York's John F. Kennedy International Airport during the graveyard shift. Their intent wasn't to harm anyone, but simply to seize whatever they could. With trusted accomplices by their side, they entered the cargo area and took off with $5.8 million in cash and $800,000 worth of jewelry, which would be around $28 million in 2024. Despite being heavily armed, not a single shot was fired and no cargo member or civilian was harmed. The heist was executed flawlessly within 70 minutes, appearing to be the perfect crime in U.S. history. However, the narrative took a sudden turn. Authorities didn't prioritize recovering the cash because they were already so preoccupied with investigating several dead bodies tied to the heist. Many had been shot in the head, a common execution style amongst criminals and mobsters. Some of the bodies were discovered hogtied in a frozen meat refrigeration truck. If that wasn't enough, a headless woman's torso washed ashore in New Jersey. What's even more astonishing is that none of the individuals tied to this heist were ever apprehended. Authorities failed to track down a single person they believed had a hand in the operation, except for a man named Louis Werner. And his fate is even more remarkable. But before diving into that, let's quickly examine how this mastermind prepared his 6 gunmen for the heist and executed it with utmost perfection.
The band of robbers, 6 and perhaps 7 men wearing ski masks, drove around to the loading dock. When they jumped one Lufthansa worker, his screams made a security guard inside open the door. That was the end of security.
The idea for the heist actually came from this guy, Louis Werner, a portly Lufthansa cargo supervisor who served as the inside man. But why would he risk it all, knowing he would likely be caught? The answer lay in a $20,000 gambling debt. Louis approached a bookmaker and Martin Krugman to recruit individuals for the job. He informed Martin about the frequent shipments of untraceable bills flown in from Germany and temporarily stored at the airline's JFK vault. Martin, who was tasked with assembling a crew of criminals, reached out to mid-level drug-dealing gangster Henry Hill. Hill then connected with the gent Burke, Martin's mentor, who assembled his crew renowned for hijacking and robbing cargo trucks from the airport. They appeared to be the perfect fit for the nearly impossible stunt, given the airport's tight security. The leader of this crew was Paul Vario, a formidable capo of the Lucchese crime family, greenlighting the Lufthansa caper, who was in desperate need of money since he'd recently lost a cocaine shipment to law enforcement.
Shortly before 4 this morning, while the moon was on the wane, a black Ford van slipped out of the shadows in the cargo area and stopped at a padlocked gate of the adjacent Argentine Airlines. One snip with heavy bolt cutters, and that security checkpoint might as well not have been there.
With everything in place, they were ready to strike. Led by their supreme leader, Louis Werner, who provided crucial information every step of the way. According to reliable sources, Werner tipped off the crew that a substantial cash shipment had arrived on Friday, December the 9th, and told them it would remain in cargo storage all weekend due to his delay in transferring it to the bank. At 3 a.m. on Monday, the 11th of December 1978, 6 masked men arrived at the Lufthansa cargo warehouse in a black Ford Econ Line van, cut the gate padlock with a bolt cutter, and entered. Now, here you might be wondering how they executed the heist so easily without triggering alarms or drawing attention from airport security. Well, they were prepared for that too. By herding employees at gunpoint into the break room, the thieves compelled the night shift manager to disable the alarm and open the double-door storage vault, guided by their inside contact, who was the leader himself, Lewis.
The other 8 workers who were on duty at the time were herded into a third-floor cafeteria and handcuffed. One worker who resisted was pistol-whipped. His scalp needed 5 stitches.
They loaded 40 15-pound cartons of cash and jewels into the van, with 2 thieves hopping in. The others boarded a waiting Buick, and they sped away around 60 minutes. Before they left, they told the security staff not to inform the police until they left, and by the time police reached the scene, every valuable thing had vanished. After the robbery, the crew met with Burke and moved the loot to the trunks of 2 other cars at a warehouse owned by John Gotti, a captain of the Gambino crime family that shared the airport turf with the Lucchese family. Following the heist, a wave of dead bodies surfaced. Almost every other day, police received reports of corpses that were somehow connected to the robbery. But the surprising death was of Krugman, Lewis's right-hand man. Krugman demanded a larger share of the loot, claiming credit for planning every detail. However, his demand was never met, as Hill and another colleague murdered Krugman a month after the heist, dismembering his body and disposing of it where it was never found. Gradually, authorities began to make some headway in the case. 2 days after the heist, police discovered the black van used in the robbery parked by a fire hydrant in Brooklyn's Carnacy neighborhood. The van, registered to a man named Edward, had been mistakenly left at the Gotti-controlled junkyard. Upon learning of Edward's potential risk of being caught and testifying against them, Burke and his associates decided to eliminate him too. 7 months after the robbery, Hill killed several other individuals involved in or associated with the heist. His statement, as told to sources, was, "Rather than give everyone $400,000 or $500,000 apiece, it was easier to put a quarter bullet in their head."
Is why all these valuables were allowed to remain here at the cargo terminal all weekend instead of being shipped off to the banks as they were supposed to be.
By the end of February 1979, only one person had been convicted for the heist, the inside man, Lewis Werner, who received a 15-year prison sentence. But the story didn't end there. Burke received word that Lewis's former cellmate, Roast Beef Kafora, who was also laundering heist money through his Brooklyn parking lot business, was advised to lay low. Instead, he decided to brag about his wealth by gifting his wife Joanna a custom pink Cadillac, driving it near the JFK cargo area where the FBI was investigating, and disclosing details about the heist and other mob activities. Upon learning of this, Burke had the couple, Kafora and his wife Joanna, killed, and their bodies were never found. As the body count continued to rise, both Burke and the crew leader Vario were eventually convicted, though not for the Lufthansa heist itself. Burke was convicted for Eaton's murder and involvement in a scandalous Boston College points shaving scheme, while Vario was convicted for extortion of freight companies.
Authorities aren't saying much more than they believe this to be the largest robbery in American history and that the investigation continues.
The story concluded with both gangsters passing away from lung cancer in jail. And with that, we conclude today's case. If you enjoyed this video and want to watch more fascinating topics like this, click on the video that's popping up on your screen. Until then, take care and goodbye.